everyone. And after witnessing a wonderful discussion on sustainable textile industry, we move on to something that is very much part of our life, which is water. The panel is going to discuss on how to achieve water positive status. And our first panelist is Mr. MV Ramachandrudu, who's a civil engineer by profession and also volunteers with an NGO called Wassan that focuses on water resource management. During his journey with Wassan, he is involved in many studies that dealt with how RO water and canned water are purified. Our second panel member is Viswanathan, who is also a civil engineer and an urban regional planner by training. He is currently a visiting faculty with the School of Development and has 34 years of experience in the water and sanitation sector. He has designed and implemented many water, wastewater, rainwater harvesting, and ecological sanitation systems. He's also worked on policy teams for the writing of the state water policy, rainwater harvesting policy, bylaws for Bangalore city, wastewater reuse policy for the state of Karnataka, and as an advisor for the national wastewater policy. Our third panel member is Ms. Kalpana Ramesh, fondly called as Water Warrior, who is an environmentalist advocating water conservation and restoration. An architect interior designer by profession, she was vexed with the city's dependency on water tankers and cans and thus started working, sorry, I think my, okay. And thus started working towards eliminating water woes by implementing rainwater harvesting at her residence and later transforming it into block by block for this city. Her commitment to exemplary practice is demonstrated by her unique ability of connecting her profession and passion for water and environmental conservation. To engage this wonderful panel of experts, we have Dr. MVRL Murthy, a senior consulting professional in water, environment, and sustainability. With a doctorate in civil engineering, water resource management from IIT Kanpur, he has over 31 years of wide-ranging experience in hydrology, environmental management, EOSH auditing and training, aqueous geochemistry, mathematical modeling, water resource management, disaster risk reduction, limnological studies, groundwater hydrologies, watershed development, rainwater harvesting, managed aquifer recharge, micro irrigation, wastewater treatment, and geospatial modeling. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you here and request Dr. Murthy to take over. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Priya. Good morning to everyone and welcome to this wonderful session. We have three luminaries on our panel as introduced by Priya. So today's agenda as put in by Priya is we are trying to understand how water positive cities are made or how they're doing it, how best they can be understood. So we'll one by one, all the panelists would talk on their respective domains. So following that, I would have a question answer session and interactive session. So before that, I would like to just put a little bit background to the whole activity. We know that water is a subject which is social, political, economical, and it evolves or revolves around everything what we do in a day-to-day basis. So now what's happening is that earlier civilizations, they used to go where water is. I mean, you look at the ancient civilization, all the civilization that has started around the water bodies, major water bodies around the world. But gradually, as we have more economic opportunities are centered around the cities, people started moving towards the cities and start settling within the cities. So when we have cities growing up, I mean, as of today, it is said about 54% of people live in cities across the globe. And going forward by 2050, I think it's going to touch about 60-65% people would start living in the cities. Definitely, it is going to put a lot of pressure on water resources management. Not only that, and along with that, it's also going to put other allied subjects like solid waste management or stormwater drainage management or urban planning by itself is going to take a heavy toll on the local bodies as well as the planners and developers. At the same time, it also would have problem with the how do you engage with the community who are need of water on a day-to-day basis, and as well as various other ancillary things that would happen within the city. So to bring these perspectives to common platform, we have Mr. Ramachandrudu, as introduced by Priya. He's a city planner. So we'd like to discuss with him on how the cities envisage water positivity in totality, and how to embrace it. I mean, what is the concept behind water positivity? I request Mr. Ramachandra to open the dialogue.
Yeah, good morning, all of you, and it's very nice to talk to all of you and share my here. Thanks to the organizers for having me on this show. I'm sorry, my camera is not working, so you cannot see me. I hope you are able to hear me. This is an interesting topic, particularly water positive status of cities. My experience is largely in rural areas. For last a couple of years, I started working in urban context also. While worked in rural areas, I was able to facilitate some action around water positive situations, at least for cluster of farmers, for a couple of villages or a cluster of villages on watershed principles. But when we look at urban context, particularly, big cities like Hyderabad, Bangalore, Delhi and all, it's really appalling how we are all living for so many years without really concern for water status. I think the main challenges, in arriving at water status situation is largely, I would like to call for situation in our policy, practice, planning, and then people. I think the same issues, it's both opportunity as well as challenge for us. First, I would like to briefly mention about the challenge. Our policies seem to be quite, disconnected with natural resources around the cities and not really caring for local resources. And there external dependency on external water resources. That seems to be the prime driving force of water resource planning in the context of city. And then planning is also not really focused on water resources, local water resources. And contrary, they seem to be actually damaging all local water resources, including groundwater, lakes, streams, and then whatever that comes to, that exists in the urban cities. And then the practices of people are also not really in favor of, water positive situation. Either we extract too much of water or we dump too much of, used water, which is very dirty. Our practices are also not really harmonious with nature and harmonious with the kind of ecological balances. I think that's where our cities are currently located. When we talk about water positive status, the starting point, I think, is, homes and colonies, and then when we accumulate them at the city level, then I think we may be able to achieve water positive status. But when households, a small family, when it is not water positive, can a city be water positive at the aggregate level? So that's the challenge I think we have. The starting point has to be individual households, colonies, and then each household, each person has to be water positive to begin with, and then arrive at slowly, at city level water positive status. So there are numerous challenges in this whole process. However, if we change the policies and practices, planning, and also people's own behavior towards water resources, look at local water resources, saturate them, use it with great respect, use it with great concern for ecological security, well-being, and quality of water without polluting it, both individual families as well as urban bodies and industrial units. Then I think we can slowly move towards water positive status in the city. I think we need to reorient ourselves in terms of our lifestyles, in terms of our greed for water. Without managing our local water resources in an urban context, do we have right to deprive water from farmers and extract water from few hundred kilometers of distance from the cities, from reservoirs, which are meant for, of course, they are meant for drinking water also, but without responsibility, I think urban centers are really exploitative in nature. I think we need to make very strong shifts in our behavior, our policy planning. And then only I think we can move towards water positive. At my personal level, my own experience has been that at household level, my home is a water positive home. We conserve roof water, we use natural cleaners, we almost recycle 95% of our water, use the water for garden, and then conserve roof water, and then use natural cleaners so that our water is not polluted. And when we share these experiences with several neighbors, there is no great response from them. Actually, I was very appalled and really surprised how citizens still live in a situation where they would like to get water when they open the tap, and then there ends the matter. They really don't care where it is coming from, where it is going to. So I think we need quite a bit of work on sensitizing our citizens in urban centers, all cities, so that they adopt certain practices, and then the planning at the household level and also at neighborhood level, ultimately at the city level, so that we are moving towards water positive status. Small little experiences are there scattered across the country in all cities. People like me are struggling almost independently. There is no great networking of these kinds of experiences. I hope we'll be able to work together. We have few like-minded people like Kalpana, Viswanathan. We are all working together in our respective areas, but I think we need to have a bigger network, bigger individuals, organizations, and with a great support from government and industries. I think that's what we need to move. Perhaps I should stop here and then continue when there are other questions.
Thank you, sir. I think, I think what you touched upon in terms of disconnected policies. How do you, would you like to elaborate on this in the sense, we have local governments working at a municipality level, and there are state level bodies and organizations, and there is central level. We know that water is, in Indian context specifically, is a state subject, and there's responsibility to provide drinking water and sanitation is a municipality subject. So how do you see in terms of the flow of information, flow of data, and flow of water, to be specific, how it should happen?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. The responsibility of local bodies, in urban context, while they somehow provide water, the question is what kind of water is it? Good quality, safe water to drink. And then particularly when there are so many bore wells that pump water from water resources, and then that is used as drinking water in several small towns and also in urban peripheries. There is a huge quality issues related to water. Either high TDS or other pollutants are occupying drinking water space, and RO plants are coming into this. And local bodies or city municipalities are not really worried about the status of water bodies within the city. They are all encroached, and wastewater is discharged into these water bodies. They are ultimately becoming a kind of dirty pools of water. And then cities end up getting water from reservoirs which are few hundred kilometers away from the cities. This is what is the disconnect. When you neglect your entire local water resources, both groundwater and surface water and streams. For example, Hyderabad has Murthy River, which is completely polluted. And then we are discharging all our wastewater into Murthy. Is this the way to treat our lakes and rivers? So this is the connect. The policy says, okay, we should treat them, we should protect them, we should not discharge wastewater into it. But the practice is completely different from that. And there is no really data about the water quality, depths of water, how much water is actually treated. It is not available in public domain. So I think we need to work at multiple levels in terms of protecting local water resources and using them in a sustainable way. For that, what kind of data is required? Are we polluting them? Are we damaging the rivers? Are we damaging the tanks? The structure of the tank and then inflows into the tank. What kind of water is coming into this? So we need to have several databases related to all these kinds of actions in a public domain. Currently, I think that kind of connectedness is not there. If you want to know what is the groundwater table city, you really don't have a live database in any city, so that people are aware of it. And particularly when deep aquifers, when water is more than 500 feet and, sometimes even 1,000 feet, there is no way you can measure that. So government has to really come forward and see that water tables are measured, water quality is measured, and water flows are measured in all our water bodies, and then that is available in the public domain so that people are sensitized about it, and then they take their own action, and then they put pressure on government, and then government is also they also have to take some responsibility in ensuring that at least some good policies are implemented to the spirit of it. Currently policy is in one direction, and action and practice is completely in another direction. So that is the dichotomy I think we need to look at. Even when you have houses, apartments, conservation of water, soak pits, they are all mandatory. But in Bandlaguda Jagir, in one of the municipalities in Hyderabad, when we did a small study under Blue Hyderabad campaign, we realized that more than 95% of the houses do not have any soak pit, and they are discharging entire wastewater sometimes onto the streets, open drains, and then they do not even have a septic tank. The municipality doesn't have completely underground sewerage water system. So this is the kind of paradox that we are living in. While the government policy says you should conserve water, have a soak pit, and then discharge your wastewater properly, but the municipality is not able to provide that kind of infrastructure, and they are not able to ensure that houses have soak pits. So this is the kind of paradox. And then people are digging bore wells. Each bore well is more than 500 feet. And then how long can we extract water? Like this. So this is the kind of paradox that we are living in. Several shifts have to be made in this entire practice more than policy, I would say.
Thank you, sir. I mean, thank you for enlightening us on the subject. But I mean, as a planner, the city planner, I mean, water positivity, okay, we can bring in from a household level to, let's say, a block level to a city level. But cities are ever expanding, in a lateral direction and vertical direction. So, I mean, where do you actually draw a line to say that the city is water positive? I mean, what is the parameter in which you can define saying that, okay, now we are water positive? I mean, there are some case studies within the country and outside the country also saying that we are water positive. How do you say that we are water positive? What is the parameter, what is the barometer for that?
Yeah, generally, recently Hyderabad is declared as water positive. I think the definition of the government seems to be that we are able to supply water to all citizens, some 200 liters or 150 liters per kind of quantity. The quantity is just sufficient to meet all the needs. So we are water positive. I think from ecological perspective, from sustainability point of view, we need to challenge this definition. How much water is local water, which is safe, which is sustainably used? And as you mentioned, urbanization is growing. Definitely cities cannot be self-sufficient because of the population and other demands. They definitely have to be depending on neighborhoods, either 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers. But what is the balance with this? How much can we extract from outside? How much are we using our own water resources? I think a healthy balance between these two is an essential indicator. Similarly, the quality of water bodies, surface water bodies in the cities, they have to be absolutely safe and then potable for drinking, or at least they are safe for using for irrigation. Currently that status is not there. Quality standards of water bodies is another indicator for water positive status. And then depths of groundwater tables. If we go deeper, more than 1,000 feet, more than 800 feet, I think we are not water positive. I think we should be able to extract water with reasonable depths of water, and then there should be a kind of meaningful use of groundwater resources too. So it may be, it is of course depending on local aquifer conditions. We may not have universal standard for it, but I think a meaningful depth of water table, sustained water table, is an indicator for water positive status. I broadly put that these are the three broad indicators: the share of local versus non-local water, quality of water in all water bodies, surface water bodies, and depth of groundwater table. I think these are the water positive indicators apart from quantity, that we need for surviving and meeting our aspirations. That is how I would look at water positive.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think now we switch the gears and move to the next important topic on us, the communities. I mean, the people who actually use the resources and who would try to be part and parts of this whole gamut of water management. So I would request Kalpana ji to focus on this aspect because she works with the people, she works with the communities, she works along with the community, she works within the communities. And I would like to ask Kalpana, I mean, what do you think in terms of people's response to this kind of activities? Because you are there in the field for, I think, last a decade or so. So what is your opinion in terms of how people would receive it? I mean, how people would perceive it to become water positive?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Murthy, and thanks for the opportunity, Tai. Working with communities, it's itself a story in itself. I mean, there's a lot of difficulties, there's a lot of challenges. Me starting off my journey as, being a sustainable home and wanting to take this knowledge to my community. The immediate thing was my community, and having them, become water positive or become the change for not being a tanker-driven society itself was a challenge in itself. But I could see that with persistent efforts and we, consistently worked towards it, we were able to see that change. I mean, I have become a tanker-free home. We don't buy common tankers in our community. And starting with this change, I also wanted to work on surface water bodies, which are the largest catchment for rain, today. And that's when the actual, working with people happened in the first ground. So first thing I understood, there are several challenges when it comes to water bodies and water. The government itself is, there's a divided approach in the departments, right? I understood that there are several ownerships for a lake. That was the first learning. And the second thing is, I also understood that the lakes connect the entire strata of society, right from the very high end to the low end. And we needed to do different kinds of awareness to bring in the local support. Right from, what I'm talking to a person in the slum cannot be the same knowledge I'm delivering to a person in a high-end community or even a middle-class community. And most of them complain that the government is the one that is letting in sewage, they're collecting our taxes, and we are supposed to have a clean environment where that doesn't happen. And why should we be part of becoming the change? The government should enable. So getting them through, through out of that thinking, because that's usually the behavior, that why is the government not doing it? We are paying our taxes, and why should we become part of this? So to make them understand that with a population of the kind we have, about 1.4 crore we are touching today, it is not possible for any government to come up with a solution unless we are part of the game. So if we create that change together, so constantly with awareness sessions, showcasing a change to them, trying to pitch for funds, getting them, but showcasing a change to them actually brought in a lot of behavior change. It brought in, a lot of people became part of this thing, but still, there's some sort of resistance that why should we do this? So we happen to do an unique experiment where NGOs, the government and communities play a role. So we clearly defined what should the government do and what is the role of the NGO and how do we bring, communities and that behavior change, because behavior change is all it is. When you come on ground, if you want to see a change happen, we want people to become part of it. And unless we connect people to water, this change is never going to happen. Once they are connected with water, but today we've lost that cultural connect, we've lost that connect with water because everyone is seeing it as a dump yard, literally a dump yard. I mean, why should we do anything towards this? And once you see a dump yard, you tend to further make it a glorified dump. So undoing that change, I was able to consistently work on one lake and create this behavior change of where communities were directly putting their sewage inlets into the water. And we were able to reverse that just with awareness, saying that, this is going to bring disease to you. This is polluting your bore wells. Doing these quality tests and making people aware. And like Ram clearly said, the data-driven action is what we need. We need to showcase this data that this is your quality of water, this is the depth of your groundwater levels, and this is what it is. So you need to become part of this change. Clearly, I was able to showcase an example where 30% of pollution in that lake erased with 3 large communities removing the sewage out of the lake, just with decentralized action. So working with communities is very, very pertinent. Yes, it is very tough, it is very hard, but when they were able to see that change, we were able to inspire more and more people. And understanding, initially, I thought like going up with a plan to them and telling them, okay, this is what the lake would become, this is what your water situation would become. Instead of this, I started to hear from them, because usually in our country, there's nothing called public opinion. You set up an STP anywhere, you do some sort of a beautification around the lake, which is so irrelevant and not bothered about water quality and not even connecting people. So once we are able to establish a connect with people, a serious connect, now they can see that the pollution is out of the lake. And they can see themselves that their air quality has improved. We've placed air quality monitors there to showcase what is the difference in air quality that they can see, how an improved environment can help. Many people come and tell us earlier they never used to feel like going to jog even around the lake. Today they are able to do. So showcasing a change and giving data to people is very, very pertinent, and we have to work in a larger context in that. So my mantra became working with lakes as the fulcrum. We started doing rainwater harvesting around 7 communities around the lake, because they are the ones that face flooding. Now, why is flooding happening? Because you have encroached, you have put your buildings. So you become the change, you become part of the change. Unless you do this, everyone says like, okay, government has, allowed the encroachment. I constantly keep telling people, we are the people among us have encroached. People among us have pushed for this land conversion and, tweaked it with political system. So we have to realize that while we are aiming towards good goals, we are also part of a bad system. So we have to, change it bottom up. We have to become the change by understanding what is it. And I really believe that if we can, we actually broke down the city into smaller blocks. And I believe that each block, each locality, we can personally outreach to them. And every time when we talk rainwater harvesting, we're only talking residential communities. How about the malls? How about the hospitals? How about the institutions? How about the corporates? The entire hospitality industry? All of this should become part of the change. It is not just communities that we target all the time. A community should be everything. Everyone that has a rooftop has to become the change, and everyone that has more than 70 families, it's mandate to have STPs and to treat your sewage water. Now that's not happening. Many people have STPs, but they don't use that because of several challenges, high power bills or whatever, but they don't do it, So who is going to implement that? So we have to create serious awareness and showcase people. If you didn't treat your water, this is the kind of contamination happening at your groundwater level, and you are the people that are going to suffer. You are going to be the beneficiaries if it becomes better. So creating that ecosystem, talking about microclimate, talking about biodiversity, talking about the entire ecosystem that can be pulled up with your own action, individual action of, storing, recharging your water, or, reusing and recycling. Recycling has to become a big thing today, because we're getting so much more water to the city. All of it is getting converted to wastewater, and nobody is bothered about it. And I think that is going to be the next disaster. More and more wastewater. And you can see urban floods is something I don't have to talk about. Year after year, it's constantly increasing. Increased rainfall is one issue. We don't save rainwater, and also increased wastewater in the environment. So both together, if it is not addressed in a decentralized way at a block level. So we are also trying to pull in these efforts where at the block level, can we understand what is the amount of rainfall, what is the amount of sewage generated, and how we can work in a decentralized way. With the government, they have larger issues to handle, but in a decentralized way, can we tackle this problem? I have seen personally that 30% of sewage out of the lake created a big change for the lake. We had many more birds come back, and we can see that there's less weed, less mosquitoes, and so much stench decreased. But what the government is happening with the government, they add more sewage to the lake. Then it becomes more and more challenging for us. So at different layers, we have to work. We have to have this top-down approach and also the bottom-up approach. And connecting temples, institutions, we have worked with masjids, making them water positive, making temples water positive, because I believe religious institutions can showcase this change to a large number of people who visit them. So we have to come up with different models. We have showcased a model where a school can take up a well and restore a heritage well, where it can become a large, a direct learning for these kids. And because awareness has to be done right from the youngsters, it is not like we make awareness happen only for, elders and adults in the society. And I personally, as a woman, I'm talking only to men, whether it is lake rejuvenation, well rejuvenation, common water, common rainwater harvesting in areas. I'm only talking to men, whether it's a government or societies or wherever. I would like more women to become part of this change, because I think they have, we can work persistently, we can be consistent, we can build this change, and we believe, we have to give a secured future for our future generations. It's very strong in us to safeguard our children. And I think more and more women should become part, and we should raise awareness at different levels, but a different kind of awareness, not just saying do rainwater harvesting or do recycling. Tell them, this is your data in your locality. This is what is happening. Can you become part of the change? And can we, restore water, groundwater, your surface water? First of all, people, like Ram said, other than the tap and the tanker, they're not aware of anything else that is water. So by restoring wells, by restoring lakes, by creating a better environment, showcasing, but we worked with 7 colonies around the lakes. Almost all the colonies have come back and told us many boards are working today. In fact, they have excess water today. So these kind of inspiring stories, and also there are a lot of people who are actually doing very, very good work. All these work should be showcased. So if you work in a local context, I think we can, rebuild in a very beautiful way and make this as a replicable model for the rest of the city and maybe the country.
That's a good insight into what you do. But this thing is that, okay, well, the municipality would say you have to have a house mandatorily fit for rainwater harvesting or make rainwater harvesting. But what do you think of the old houses or the old infrastructure which can be retrofitted to fit into this kind of this thing? People are not so much keen to get into that kind of mode of retrofitting. You think it's feasible to inculcate that kind of a thought process into the people? Have you any examples for that?
Yeah, most of the communities that we've worked with, they're already built environments. And like I said, most of them are built in buffer zones. They are in the wrong footing already. We have been able to make them to change. We have been able to make them to do rainwater harvesting. We have been able to showcase a quality change. The water quality in their bore wells earlier fetched more black water. Today, after they do rainwater harvesting, we have showcased that there is a serious quality change. Maybe just by dilution, you can create, a better water quality for yourself, and you can avoid so much of urban flooding. Last year with the floods, the lake breached. Today, we created, alternate channels and bypass channels for the lake, where only rainwater can come into the lake and where we can separate sewage and garbage from it. By creating these bypass channels, this year, even with the heavy flow of rain, there's no battle with urban floods there. It's nicely getting in, and all the rainwater harvesting pits that we've done around the lake and in their communities are actually working. So, like I said, showcasing a change to them will help them inculcate, and all old structures also can do rainwater harvesting. If they couldn't do within their household, they can actually do it along the streets. They can have 3-4 houses come together and they can become groundwater rich. So this doing it in a common way, and also we have examples where around apartments, the parks, we have made them water positive. We have made sure that their water is, recharging pits inside the park, and reverse effect is their borewells are working well. So we're trying to see if whatever common areas that they have around them, they can utilize them for rainwater harvesting. If their building didn't support, because it is very true that rainwater harvesting is not a cookie cutter solution. It's very, very site specific. And especially the larger developments, working with builders, right at the building stage. So this is what we are doing also. We've outreached more than 40, 50 builders, and we are doing serious work with 10 large builders, where we are making sure that they become zero discharge societies. Because once they build and concrete it end to end, it becomes a huge challenge for them to reverse this. And communities who live there are facing this dilemma, like, how do we do rainwater harvesting when everything is concreted? Maximum they can do is store, but recharge, there is no way to even take a rig into those basements, and how do you do this? So encouraging builders even before they put buildings on ground is something we are seriously working towards, because I think the change should happen there.
But in terms of, because all these activities would need funding. Okay, how do you actually, work with governments or industry? Are they, conducive environment in which actually these things could happen? People are coming forward to spend the CSR funds to make these things happen within the community or around their work areas.
CSR funds for water bodies seriously is a huge challenge, because people put a back foot when they see that what they have to deal with, the encroachments, the serious issues, reducing the nala width, and having flooded lakes. And this is something the CSR, the companies don't come forward if they see all these challenges. But we have to, do like pre-restoration works, make sure all this is a clean platter before we even go and approach a CSR and tell them that we can enable this change for you, and this is what we can showcase. And we have worked on the at a community level, worked with the government. So that's where I feel NGOs and people like us play a role, because we make sure that how to align these efforts, how to align it with CSR. And like I said, we got a school to restore, well. So that was a very good example we set. Now we can tell many schools to adopt wells around in their vicinity. It could be heritage, it could be non-heritage wells, but they could restore and create these examples while the schools keep talking about climate change and sustainability. Making a life change on ground is real learning for them. And this school with 2,000 plus students, they have done several case studies of this well restoration. They have had so many deliberations, so many exhibitions have happened, online exhibitions. So it's a great way of learning and seeing that what change they could bring. And we worked with a Goshala, we have worked with masjid. So there are several examples that we have set, and I think that's the way forward, collaborating and working together with the government, with the CSR, and that's because CSR is what is required to make this change. But how to align rightly with the CSR? And CSR is not only with the government, with the corporates, it's with the builders, it's with schools, it's with several other organizations that we need to tap into and rethink this.
Thanks. Kalpana, you're beyond imagination by namesake. In the sense, you make things happen in a very difficult area, but things would come out. Okay, now we move to our panelist, Viswanathan. Sir, I think you are one of the pioneers in this subject for long years. So, how do you think, because now the new catchment is the city, in the sense, the water is like Ram is saying, and other people are saying, we bring water from outside. So the water is entering into the city, and getting water outside the city is equally important, and whatever the water that comes in need to be reused, recycled, and how do you perceive the governments are thinking in terms of they're only trying to bring the water, but not actually creating enough infrastructure to reuse it effectively?
Well, very interesting discussion and great question also. I'll try to be brief. One of the things is that in the 20th century, the city was seen as something which needed supply of water. So we created institutions of water supply whose main job was to identify a source, usually a river, put up a dam there, put in pumping machinery and pump water into the city. It was all supply oriented. And that was the need of the hour. At that point of time, it was relevant. In the 20th century, that was the thinking. The 21st century is the thinking of demand management, being local and being ecological. But unfortunately, what's happened is we have 20th century institutions which are still manned by one kind of sector specialists, engineers who are pumping water. I'm also a civil engineer, so I don't want to damn the fraternity, but I'm just defining a problem. The problem now is of multi-sectoral experience, right? And multi-sectoral expertise. So we need hydrogeologists, we need ecologists, we need hydrologists, we need weather people. We need people who understand ecology and sociology, right? Because universal connection. So therefore, how do we re-architect our institutions becomes a challenge for us, especially with water relevant for the 21st century. And it's always a work in progress. We have to not blame or shame, but understand what the problem is and try to re-architect ourselves. One other point which I wanted to make, which you had asked before, is how do you see a water positive city, is to start to look at it from a river basin perspective. At a river basin scale, which is a unit which hydrologists agree is a good unit to plan for, a city also has a certain right to river waters because there are citizens here. And so therefore, what is that right to water? How should the city get access to that water? Once it gets it, we have the technology now to return it back to nature at the same quality at which we appropriated it, right? So we can actually give back drinking water at the same source from where we appropriated it, if we capture the ecological price for water. That's all possible technologically. But do we have the political will? Do we have the financial will to get the monies to our institutions to be able to do that? These are questions that we'll have to ask and find answers for, right? So there's a framing at a river basin level. There's a framing at the institution level. How do we re-architect our institutions? But that's also the broader framing, because right now, what we need is a cooperation between Samaj, Sarkar, and Bazaar. Samaj as individuals, as communities, Sarkar as the state and its institutions that it creates, local bodies or specialized parastatal institutions, and Bazaar as the market forces, which bring entrepreneurship, which bring innovation, which bring technology into the field, right? But which also bring livelihoods. And so this is a fascinating mix for us to start to define and address, and it's going to be a fun journey in the future. The future is full of possibilities, Dr. Murthy.
Great. I think, I mean, you stress on it's not only the conservation, there's also business case involved in city water positive cities. I think I read somewhere by 2050, it is going to be about $90 trillion business. That is the way things would happen. I think, I mean, what is the message or how the startups would actually look into it in terms of what kind of technology?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Dr. Murthy, I'll jump the gun because I want to be very short and brief and stop at very quickly so that there's 1 or 2 minutes at least for discussion. So here's one way of looking at it. In the city that I work with, which is Bangalore, there are 750 families of traditional well diggers. These well diggers were out of business. They don't have a job because nobody's digging wells, everybody's digging a bore well. With rainwater harvesting, with recharge wells, with revival of traditional old open wells, deepening them, desilting them, cleaning up, we are trying to create a livelihood for these 750 families, right? So it starts as a livelihood creation, as a job creation and urban employment guarantee scheme, where livelihoods become part of the solution for water sector, water scarcity, one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is that the city itself is a fertilizer and water factory. Bangalore gets 1,450 million liters of water from the Kaveri River. It gets 600 million liters from groundwater, 2,050 million liters. It treats about 80% of this wastewater and sends it to the drought-prone districts of Kolar, Chikballapur, Anekal, Ramnagaram, which is surrounding it, as treated wastewater to fill the lakes there, to make sure that agricultural livelihoods come back to life, farmers get livelihood security, and the city gets food security. Correct. So the city is itself being imagined as a water and fertilizer factory, which has tremendous business opportunities for wastewater treatment plants, for designers of wastewater treatment systems, for the way we imagine it. And then the business opportunity for the farmers to reuse the wastewater and create productive crops, water efficient drip irrigation systems, and the kind of crops that we grow for the city to come back. And within the city itself, rainwater harvesting has created a set of entrepreneurs who are designing and making rainwater filters, right? There are 40 companies who are making rainwater filters, and it's giving them great jobs. There are young entrepreneurs who are setting up wastewater treatment units at building levels, right? And at a small scale of 10 KLD, 50 kiloliters per day, 100 kiloliters per day, and then reselling the water to the company, which makes business sense. So business opportunities are opening up, livelihood opportunities are opening up, and solution space is opening up. The only thing missing is nobody's looking at the big picture and directing the vision and the narrative so that we're able to synergize all this and make sure that this has plenty more punch than it has as individual efforts or small scale efforts.
Great, sir. I think C.K. Prahlad has said India is a country for world's laboratory. I think this is his words. Okay, so I mean we know that globally there are water positive cities, but India can take lead on this aspect and create more in a urbanized area, more populated areas, how water can be managed effectively.
Absolutely.
I think that is the way. I think this is the week of giving of joy. So I mean we would like to thank all our panelists. We cannot. We would like to say thank you for all your insights and your experience, which has come forward and which has given us the quite a bit of understanding. And one of the things I think one we need to understand is I think water as a subject is multifaceted. So as Krishna was talking about, we need to involve more and more people who are related to the water into the gamut. Let it be hydrogeologists, let it be civil engineers, let it be urban planners, let it be, water treatment people. So it's a much broader perspective we need to bring in. And we also have to have a common platform for data information interchange, such that we can exchange the views, ideas, and data. So I think one last word we would request from each one of you. What do you want to convey? We have a couple of minutes to close before actually we close it. Mr. Ramachandrudu, you want to say something?
Yeah. I think we really have to put several things together and develop that vision and synergies among all of us. I would only hope that younger generation people would create more enterprising options for water sector, and then make it really water is everyone's business in the true sense of business also. I think that's how I would look at future water situations.
Kalpana, your take?
Yeah, I think connecting back people to water. I mean, in way of doing, maybe creating interesting public spaces out of it, which there's a dearth for, and bringing back that connect in the true sense and making it really a data-driven approach is what I think should happen. And I think that's the way forward.
Okay, Viswanathan?
Cities are the future for India. Cities are one of the most efficient users of water. And if cities put their mind to it, they can innovate and become net suppliers of water and nutrients to hinterland, support rural livelihoods. Cities are the future. Entrepreneurship, innovation, community participation, and water literacy is the way forward. And the future is one of endless possibilities and solutions.
Great, sir. Thank you. Thanks, all of you. And I think I would like to conclude this way: is that with the famous the British poet has said, "Men may come and men may go, but I go on forever." So the water is perpetual. The water keeps on flowing, and how best we can be a part of its journey, how best we can add to it in positive sense. So with these words, we would like to close this workshop, and would like to thank the organizers, the Thai Hyderabad, and the whole Thai team. I think back to the studio. Thank you. Have a great day.